Maddog. Welcome
Hey,
on to For the Souls
thank you for having
podcast.
me. Thank you for having
How
me.
you doing today?
Pretty good. How you
Yeah.
doing?
Good. I wanted to say thank you for reaching out and inviting me to the music video. I
Hmm.
hella would have came, but it was hecka last minute and we had taxes and I was like, dang. But
Yeah, you gotta
next
do what
time I
you
got
gotta
you.
do.
I'll come through for sure.
Yeah, it's all good. I just wanted to really kind of show a little bit of unity in Sacramento because it's an old song. We did the record. Well, I wrote the song probably when I was like 18, 19 years old. Obviously the lyrical content's what I was going through and doing at the time. So, um, you know, just getting back into the music scene, releasing new music, um, talking to Bo Biz, he's a good friend of mine. So we were over here chopping it up and kind of talking about how to bring in this new music. And he's saying, well, a lot of people never really seen the face or didn't know who you were behind that song. He's like, that's a big record, man. He's like, we should do a video. And I was like, man, I told him, yeah, you know what? Fuck it, let's do it, right? So, like 5 minutes later, he's posting. I
In
started,
true Bo Biz fashion right there. He's on it. He's
I
on
started
it business
laughing
wise.
too because I was like, damn, fool, you didn't waste no time. And he was like, I had to do it before you changed your mind. It's like,
Yeah.
well, we're in it now. That's kind of how it
Yeah.
goes though with this music stuff,
Yeah, and
right?
it does show unity. I was like amazed to see how many people came together all together. I thought it was cool, even like bringing out the tattoo artists and just everybody that like we're all networking with and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think what you guys are doing in terms of that is putting on unity in Sacramento. Even my husband commented on it. He was like, "Man, that's hella cool to see all the different people from the like certain different hoods that came together and everyone's just showing that unity." And that song is like a staple song. I remember hearing that back in the day, but like Bo said, there was never a face to the song.
Yeah.
But the chorus is the most catchiest part.
Yep.
I told my husband, I was like, he's literally been singing that part throughout the
Mhm.
day, and it's been busting me up laughing because even when we walked in, he's like, "Yeah, you're a Northern Warrior." It's hella catchy, hella catchy. So I'm guessing the life that you were living at that time inspired the song.
Yeah,
Did it
for
take?
sure.
It did take off a little bit back in the day, but did it take off more like outside of Sacramento or just Sacramento?
So really, I didn't have no way because I released that was my first album, and there's a little bit of history there with um, I was on a label with some friends of mine, IMG, Ideal Music Group, and so we had just released Looney Coleon, we just released Devious, and Smig Dirty was next up. Then it was my album, but everything kind of fell to pieces because a couple of the dudes behind the company's money got locked up, tied up. So it was just all left on the shoulders of one man, and he didn't handle the stress very well. You know what I mean? So the whole thing just started crumbling. So at the end of it, I was just able to grab my project and step. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I just pushed it out independently with no distribution, and everything was kind of gray water, gray area with that. So I pushed forward, probably pressed up a couple thousand copies, selling them out of the trunk and shows and stuff like that, and then just continue to make new music.
Yeah.
So uh, after that had happened, um, that's when I hooked up with Hog Life, and dude had already put out a few records himself, and he was working with some cats out here in the North Cali Entertainment. And he said, "Man," he was like, I didn't know that was." He's like, "Man, I didn't know that was you singing on that hook, the one for Looney Coleon. That was another like
Oh
famous
yeah, I
song I
know the
did,
song.
right?" So he was like, "Dang, bro." He's like, "I heard your album." He's like, "I'm doing a compilation called Northern Warriors." He's like, "Your song's called Northern Warrior." He was like, "Let me put it on the record." So yeah, I didn't really have any logistical stats on the actual numbers, right?
Yeah.
Because back in those days, people were doing they were
CDs.
ripping CDs, burning them, sharing them. So a lot more people had your music. They used to say the rule of thumb was for every uh, every CD you sold, five people at least burnt that same CD, right?
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it. So even though you didn't sell 5,000 copies, if you had 1,000 in rotation, you more than likely reach 1,000 people's stereos. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then with the whole era of the internet, and I want to say it was like a Napster or something where people were just burning down, downloading CDs and stuff. So probably more people had heard it than I was aware of. But I feel like when I did that, when I submit the song to the homies compilation, it got a little bit uh, more people noticed it.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely weren't probably from bumping my album, but a few like a had a cult little following, small amount of people that knew who I was. But it was when I re-released it on his compilation that I started to get a lot of people from different areas. Because what he did was he just, he got a few songs from different people. Woody, some cats from his camp. It was some cats from Dakota, just a bunch of dudes. Mousy from San Francisco. So there was like a bunch of dudes that were rapping, and at the time, I wasn't even aware that like homeboy rap was a thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't bumping it.
Yeah.
I was just bumping the underground stuff that was out here. Kind of all the music that I was tied to, or you know what I mean. At least I heard about them growing up. But that's kind of how music is, right? It starts in the streets, and then it kind of moves into the, you know what I mean. Gets a little bit of notice, and then it kind of moves its way up, more more mainstream. But this is the age of the internet, so everybody hears everything. News is
Yeah.
immediate now,
It
right?
spreads like wildfire
Hmm.
real fast. And then
Yeah,
now that all these bigger pages too are posting, and even like the food community posting more like Northern California kind of our environment, our culture out here, it's getting a lot more recognition than I think back in the day.
yeah,
Um, I
for
know
sure.
that you've done lots of interviews, and I've seen some of them, and you got the name Mad Dog because you used to Mad Dog people
Yeah.
and getting
Hmm.
some tussles back in the day. But before we talk about all of that, what was your childhood like?
Well, growing up, so I was lucky enough. I had a stable household. I'm not gonna pretend that I didn't. My dad was real strict. He was kind of no nonsense dude. Um, and my mom was more kind of. She came from more of like a disrupted family, I guess. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Uh, More hood type stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
like my dad was more, but he was a little bit older too than her. So like I said, he just used to have high expectations for us, keep us busy when we was kids, and try to keep us off the streets. But we still grew up in the neighborhood, so everybody around us that was going through all that, we were still exposed to it.
Yeah.
But like I said, on my mom's side, it was more, you know, more. I don't know how to put it.
Like a Chicano kind of culture?
It's
Like,
definitely both sides of Chicano culture. My pops is from El Paso, so
okay.
him and his brothers moved out here when they were like 15. Their pops used to work the railroad, so
Okay.
he moved his family out here for work. Got a job in the capital, and then well, he first moved out himself, and then he sent for his family, and then they grew up right here downtown,
Yeah.
right like East Street area. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yep.
And then so I went to Sac High. My mom's family was a little more, they had been here a little bit longer. You know, there's like I said, a little more hood, less structured, I guess. So my pops and his brothers were kind of, had to walk a fine line, because Gramps was pretty strict. My
Yeah.
mom's dad was pretty, he was like, "You want to bear me home? Come on," you know what I mean? But both of them good people in their own way. You know what I mean? Just a little different.
Yeah. And you have siblings?
I have siblings. I got a rest in peace, a younger brother who no longer with us. I got a little sister. She's the very youngest, and then I got an older brother.
Oh,
So
okay.
there was four of us all together. But yeah, same mom, same dad. Grew up in the same household. I wouldn't say it was the easiest. It was kind of dysfunctional, but
In what sense, if you don't mind elaborating?
just like just that old school mentality of fucking.
Was there affection in your home?
It wasn't really like that. Not growing up. It I wouldn't say my mom was cold hearted, but she wasn't a soft person either.
Yeah.
Like, so it was just how she grew up. There's a lot of violence in her household. You know, my grandfather, rest in peace, he was an alcoholic. So he was a hardworking mechanic, nicest guy in the world. You know, take off his shirt off his back and give it to a stranger type of dude. But you know, once he get on his drugs, which was all the time, you know what I mean. It seemed like the common theme was when he was ready to bring the party back to the house when the party should have been over, and he
Hmm.
wanted to drink with random strangers from the bar. Oh, this is my primo, or this is my homie,
Yeah.
and it would just create havoc. At least is what how my mom told the story, you know.
Yeah.
And then you know, like I said, my dad's pops was he's more straight laced, Sunday church, real quiet, no nonsense, do what I say.
Yeah.
Don't you know? No reason for me to explain. Either do what I say or get your ass whooped.
Yeah, so
You
you
know.
got to see both sides of the coin growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I find like in observing families, it's usually like that one parent comes from a little bit more of a stable household,
Mm-hmm.
and the other parent usually comes from a house that didn't have that much stability or it was dysfunctional in its ways. And I find it interesting to see how like the generations that come after, how we adapt to those environments, you
Man.
know, and being the middle uh, son. First and foremost, condolences to the family members that you have lost,
Mm-hmm.
but being the middle one, there's this saying that the second child is always the craziest. And I know that's true in my household. My second daughter does
Yeah.
not care, and my last son don't care. Is that true for you?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it was. I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of, you know, when they say you're a product of your environment, like you grow up around certain things, you kind of learn quick, right? And
Mm-hmm.
lucky for me, I grew up around some solid people who were able to steer me in the right direction. You know what I mean? And then there was just that point of like trying to prove myself. To it was like um, because I had an older brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
So him bringing me around at first, oh, that's you know, that's his little brother right there. And then at some point where it was like, well, it wasn't cool to be little brother no more. It was like, can I just be me? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So that's when I had to start like, all right, man. Well, I got to stand out for something. These guys gonna know who I am
Yeah.
and not know me just as his little brother.
Do you think that's a rite of passage that all men go through?
I think so. I think it's just when you're, and you got to remember too, because like we weren't we weren't inside internet kids. We weren't befriending people from different cities and nah. When you grew up in a neighborhood, you knew everybody in your area. You even knew kids from different areas because their parents really didn't care if they was coming over on their bicycles from 2, 3 miles away. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So my neighborhood's uniquely smack dab in the middle of like three different neighborhoods. You know, where G Parkway is like a little triangle right in between. Freaking on the other side of the tracks, you have, you know, 29th Street and the Gardens, and you have Detroit right below them. Meadowview just down the way. You got Valley High over here, and Valley High was a culmination of Valley High Pyrus and Valley High Gangster Crips and Southside Crips and Valley High homies. So you know what I mean? It was just like all these like hoods all around us. Franklin to the north. So you know, it was just different times. You know what I mean? You grew up, you went outside, you knew everybody in your area. You didn't just, you know. So like when you grow up with other kids, it's a it's a common theme. It's kind of like that Lord of the Flies. You ever read
No.
that book? Or okay, so it's basically where kids govern kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it would be like that when you were had no parental supervision, right? The adult in the room was the oldest kid or the baddest kid, the one who
Yeah.
was whooping everybody's ass just because I said so. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it was. You know what I mean? So, well, if you're learning from older kids, not much older than
Yeah.
you know, they can show you so much, but you
Yeah.
know, they can't really show you everything.
Yeah, and I think it's also too as humans, I feel like we have a very I know we're like a more advanced species, right? But we're very primal and animalistic in our nature in general.
For real.
And just like wolf packs have the alpha,
Yeah.
it's the same thing in terms of our interactions with each other. Because I know even with myself, you know how you said like you know, you're the little brother, but at some point you prove you're not the little brother no more.
Yep.
I'm the big sister, but I've always ran into situations where people, where it's either someone older or things that they're like wiser. And it's kind of like the way that I say, like someone tries to big dog you,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you know, and it's like, And I've
No.
always fought back against any kind of authority like that. But I think that's because my dad raised me be a leader, not a follower.
Right.
So it was very hard for me with my character to just fall in line because you're telling me to fall in line. You know, if anything, I'm going to be the one leading the pack because that's just how I'm built, you know?
For real.
And in real life, when you don't have that structure and you guys are just, you know, running amok doing your thing, it separates very fast who's built that way and who's not built that way. And I think for those of us who turn to the streets, that proving yourself usually comes in the form of aggression.
Absolutely. I feel like, especially for a young man going through like the changes of adolescence, where when you're becoming a young man, you got all this anger, and you're just dealing with shit. Nobody gets you, nobody understands you because you're looking through the eyes. You know, you're looking through tunnel vision. You don't see everything around you. You're just seeing everything that's in your way. And then, so it just kind of felt like at that point, you know, even there was a point in time where because my brother always hung out with older dudes, and all his homies were the homies. My homies were the homies. My little brother's homies was the homies. So like everybody would come back and kick it at our house. So we had all these like generations, you know, at the same house kicking it. But then it came to a time where my older brother started getting into more stuff that he didn't want me to be exposed to, like trying to look out and be a good brother.
Yeah.
He's like, man, you can't come. And I'd be like, what? What do you mean I can't come? Man, get out of here with that shit.
Yeah.
But so it was kind of weird. That's when I started going out and say, okay, well, if I can't go, I'm just finding something else to get into, and I'll go do something else. But I also had a unique situation where I had two uncles live on the same street, and another uncle lived around the corner. Another uncle lived, you know, a few blocks on the other side of the main road. So we had a big family in a small area. You know what I mean? My dad's brothers were close growing up, so we had a lot of family. So in my neighborhood, we just a bunch of little kids just running around. My wife, um, she's cousins with my first cousin on my dad's side, lived across the street from me. I look at I look at her like an older sister.
Yeah.
She's about 3 years older than me. Her and my brother about the same age. So her brother was my age, and we just all grew up together. Hella tight, hella tough. Just whatever we was doing it together. Just a big mob of kids in the
Yeah.
neighborhood. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So you guys have known each other from way back? Yeah.
We did, but we didn't really. It wasn't like we wasn't in the same. Like we didn't kick it, or you know what I mean. But my wife came to stay with her cousin. You know, she's probably already what 15 or something, a few years older than me. So you know, she was just kind of doing her own thing. So it wasn't like we didn't really we knew of who each other were. You know,
Yeah.
we were around, but
Mutual acquaintances kind of
yeah,
thing.
we just didn't really know each
Yeah.
other.
I want to touch back on what you said, you know, in your adolescence, just the hormonal changes, everything, and the aggression and the anger that comes with that transition in adolescence. In hindsight, what do you think that anger stemmed from
Man,
that led you to the streets and just the lifestyle that you were engaging in?
it was it was a lot. So I would say it was an accumulation of feeling like I was catching loss after loss after loss, and it started in my own household.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting my ass whooped by my dad, getting my ass whooped by my mom, getting my ass whooped by my brother, whooping on my little brother's ass, fighting with my cousins. So it was just like, then you go to school, and all right, well, these guys they say, let's go cut school, let's go cut school, let's go get into something. Then you pull up to a house partying some older cats. They want to
Yeah.
fight you too. You be like, all right, well, let's get it.
Yeah.
So it was just an accumulation of just constantly getting just battle upon battle, just growing up, and it just felt like up until my small amount of life. Because like when you're 15, you oh man, you think you're grown, you think you got it all figured out. 18, 15 to 18, you think you got everything figured out, you know everything.
Yeah.
But you only lived a small portion of time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just think about it. Like if maybe till like 4, 5, 6 years old, you was still just a little kid.
Yeah.
And so really at what time you just really barely started growing up at that age, right? But then you got all this anger and you're feeling like, the emotions is probably kicking in. And I think that's a big part of it, right? You don't know how to control that anger. It's just a reacting. Like
Yeah.
it's a all you do is react to your environment. And so all you've been dealing with is, fighting, and it's always been a one-sided fight, and you're just like, no more.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
Let's go.
crazy. I just had a conversation with my brother about that. I have a brother that's 16 and a brother that's 14.
Hmm.
And you, like, speaking from a younger brother's perspective, it's hitting home for me because I see that in my brother's dynamics, and I see that my 14-year-old brother, he's getting to that point of like, nah, like, I'm my own individual, I'm gonna
Right.
prove myself. And big bro is trying to like, no, you're still little. But I just had a conversation with him literally over the weekend, and I was telling him like, bah, the one thing that was the hardest for me to learn growing up
Mm-hmm.
was that I have to be disciplined in my own emotions because I used to be so reactive. And, obviously your frontal cortex isn't developed when you're in your adolescence, right? And you feel this, you're invincible, nothing could touch you. And you just lack the ability to understand, consequence to action. And so I was trying to tell him, I don't want you to learn the hard way that I learned,
Mm-hmm.
that you at some point have to be a master of self.
Right.
And it takes a lot of us a long time to learn how to do that. How long would you say that it took you to learn how to master yourself and harbor your aggression? Because from what I've heard, you'd get down for the get down, but
Right.
at what point or what age did you say, okay, at some point my mentality has to change? Or is it still the same?
Let's put it this way. I'll still run fair with anybody who wants it. So, I mean, it's just that I don't go looking for it, and I don't have nothing to prove. I just I take care of myself when I have to,
Yeah.
and that never goes away. But in hindsight of reckless violence, being able to control it, I would say it took me as a young parent because I had a daughter when I turned 18, and then my son was born like 3 years later. So I want to say, because even being a little girl's dad was hard for me to not want to protect my baby girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even care, if I have to smack a kid around, I'll smack a kid. I don't care. That's my baby girl. Ain't nobody gonna put her hands on her. And that's just how I felt. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just how I felt. And so I don't say I had it all totally under control, but I would say as as I started to get older as a father and knowing that my kids needed me around, it made me want to tend to think things through a little bit more, and try to be more in control
Mm-hmm.
than out of control. Because once that anger hit, it would just it would be like blind fury. You know what I mean? Like you're just not stopping until you know what I mean. And there's been a few times where I had to like snap out of it just so I can escape because the cops is on their way. You know what I mean? It's over. It's over, but it's not over for
Yeah.
me because it's just it's that blind rage, and that people could get to that point pretty easy when it's a familiar place of self defense,
Yes.
right? When you're just in self defense mode, you ain't thinking about nothing else but eliminating the threat that's in front of you. And sometimes you can't even see through your own rage and anger that threat's already eliminated. Like, let it go, just get
No,
out,
I
just
hear you
go.
with that. I feel like my husband's like that. No, seriously, I feel like he's like that because there's been, I mean, certain situations that we've been in. We've been together 11 years. Like we've seen things together, and there's been certain situations where I'm just like trying to, as a wife, de-escalate a situation
Uh-huh.
at all costs because I know to the extent that he'll take things when he's in that blackout, it's like a whole nother person comes out.
Yeah.
And I think that when a wife knows that rage that can come out in her husband, one, it's a beautiful thing because that is a protector in you. That is the part of you that will go to war for your family and your loved ones. And I think that's a beautiful aspect of men. But it can also be very frightening because in a split decision, it could alter your guys' whole life. And it's like, as a wife, I'm always thinking about our family and like, dude, I know the level that you could take it, but that could also ruin our lives. Like, I could not have you. The kids could not have you.
Yeah.
And that fine balance of being a man who will go out there and be willing to risk it all for his family, but also the discernment of when is the time to do so and not has been tricky, especially when you have a husband that, you know, grew
Right.
up hood or grew up in the streets. Like, it's been an adjustment.
Shout out to husband, man. Right on.
Yes.
Shoot.
But in my opinion, you guys are the best kind of men because there really is nothing that you won't do for your family, even conquering yourself. Like, you strike me as a very calm man right now, but I also know in that calmness, you're capable of probably a great war.
Yep. Well, I've also learned too to try to be, like I said, less reactionary. Just put more thought into things because as you get older, you tend to realize what you have to lose when you're young, and it's something I say it all the time. When you're young and you don't have nothing to lose, you ain't got a house, you probably don't got a career, you just have a job maybe, or you don't got a job, you don't got no money, you don't got no kids, or your kids are just babies. When you don't have nothing to lose, you're the most dangerous person alive
Mm-hmm.
because you ain't got nothing to live for
Mm-hmm.
and everything to throw it all away for just for pride because that's all you got, right? That's literally the mind and mentality of a young man. But as you get a little bit older, and you see it a lot, people slow down a little bit, they think twice. They be like, man, it's not even worth it. I'm not gonna lose my my daughter, my wife, my son. You know what I mean? Over this sucker who's nothing really. Like
Yeah.
he ain't nobody. And he's probably most of the time when these situations happen, it's usually some alcohol involved or some somebody getting a little extra tough for whatever reason. The alcohol comes out, and people want to, they want to show out, and so me personally, there's been a few incidents, um, not super recent, but as of recently that I've had to I've had to just try to talk the person out of it.
Yeah.
Like, look, I guarantee you don't want to do this right
Yeah.
now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's your fair warning. Don't bark up the street. And it seems that when you do that, it's it's like a trigger for somebody to embolden themselves because they think, oh, this dude's scared.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, you're gonna find out.
Yeah.
You're gonna find out. So, and I don't like, I don't like to say I'm a bad. Like I don't like to carry myself. Like I don't walk around thinking I'm a bad dude. I don't be disrespectful to people. But most people who really are what they are, they don't have to tell you about it. And the people who, can't wait to tell you how tough they are every opportunity they get. Oh, they want to brag about this, they want to brag about that. It's like I could brag about. I got 47 years of life. I could tell you all kinds of stories, but what does that say more about me?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you really want to get to know uh, the true person I am, the substance behind the man, well then let's have a meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
It don't always have to be war stories. There's a time and place for everything, right?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? I'm not a professional athlete, so these are not accolades or you know what I mean? The triumphs and it's just it's just life lessons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think every experience in life is another lesson. So like I invited you out to that video. We did a video for a song that's over 20 years old, 24 years old when I released it. So there's a reason behind it. We have to go backward to go forward. Just to remind everybody, okay, yeah, this is part of my catalog. I've done this music before, but it don't necessarily mean we have to continue to move the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, you know, um, we have to think about lifting up our people. You know what I mean? You can't you can't train everybody to be a crash test dummy and just send them on a mission. Yeah, I just I appreciate the invite and the interview. I saw your little, a few of your episodes and your kind of your backstory. You were talking about it. You're pretty open with your life, and the one thing that stood out to me was how your faith,
Yeah.
your faith in God, your your love for your family, is what brought you basically. I wouldn't say away from who you are, but just refined who you are to be a better person for your family.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I
The
mean?
way that I tell people is, I don't regret anything that I did in life
Mhm.
because I think it shaped who I am, and I'm very happy with who I am.
Yep.
In retrospect, would I have done things differently for the sake of the wisdom I want to give my kids? Sure, but ultimately, it's aided me in this perspective that I take. But I always say that like my walk and just the shift in my life that transformed me really just transformed me back to who I was before life hurt me. Like I feel like the adult woman that I am is really that 3-year-old girl that saw life through this lens of purity, but I've been able to master myself and my perspective of others. And I conquered that power within myself through
Good
the
for
help of
you.
my faith.
Yeah.
So it's like I came back to me before I had to prove myself, before I had to fight to show you that you don't got to mess with me, before I have to, I'm the bad kid because I'm the one doing all the crazy stuff.
Well, what do they say? There ain't no such thing as a bad dog, just bad owners, right?
Yeah. you know,
They be
it
like,
rings
"Oh, that
true.
dog's mean." Well, that dog wasn't always mean.
Yeah.
At one time, that dog was a little puppy. Just needed
Yep.
love.
Yep. And
We,
we come from households like, where we talked about the affection,
mhm.
that emotional intelligence, you know, wasn't there. And I love the old school mentality.
Yeah.
Genuinely. I 100% do. You remind me a lot of my dad. He raised me very much the same way, but they lacked that emotional intelligence. And I feel like our generation is breaking that cycles. And even you in like the epiphanies and revelations you've got, even coming on here and this whole last like 10 minutes of what you spoke,
Hmm.
right? Those are seeds you're planting in the listeners and the people that admire your music or are watching you, and the youngsters that were once in your shoes,
Yeah,
or maybe
appreciate that.
even older people that might still be in your shoes, you know.
Yeah. Well, you can't. One thing you can't do, and I'll tell you right now, it's like when I was younger, I was sure-footed in the wrong direction. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like I had good morals. I was loyal. There was a lot of good qualities I had, but the recklessness, right? The it was basically I was self-destructing. I was blowing up my own life, my own situation, and every bad choice I made and every bad decision, and a lot of it was based off, you know, anger, right?
Yeah.
Anger, frustration, you know. Um, but like I said, now, you know, I don't I don't get on no kind of soapbox and preach to nobody on how not to be or how who to be, because everything is where you're at right now in life. It's it's just where you're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And everybody has not only a choice but an opportunity to grow from their life experience. And so when you're moving forward in life, 5 years from now, you're probably going to move a little bit differently,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just because you've gained some wisdom and knowledge, and that's okay too. Ain't nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Um, Sometimes you don't always have to be the most gangster dude in the world. You know what I mean? Sometimes the most gangsterest thing you can do is tell your kids you love them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like growing up in my household, wasn't a whole lot of cariños. It wasn't a whole lot of sentimental talk. It was just pretty much business. But the love was there. It was showed. I know my parents loved me, but it was just never really spoken about. It wasn't. You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't like that. So,
Do you think that would have made a difference in the path that you took?
mm, I don't know. You're basically asking me if I would have grew up with a different family, would I be a different person? Probably. because that just wasn't them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and I love the way my parents raised me. You know what I mean? No nonsense, no BS. I think nowadays a generation of too much emotion is overwhelming. How soft this world is becoming. You can't say anything without hurting somebody's feelings, and everybody's feelings and imaginary beliefs and thoughts have to
Hmm.
be accepted and acknowledged, and otherwise you're a bully or whatever. I don't believe that. I believe that, you know, like, hey man, if you have faith, have faith. But if you live in la la land, if you're just a weird person with a mental illness that thinks you're something you're not, and you want everybody to be sympathetic to that and accept what you think as your reality as our
Hmm.
reality, the truth about it is that you can't change reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reality is what it is. You know what I mean? And all this too much emotion is I feel like it's creating just this
A,
soft generation.
yeah, a coddled society. Not just a coddled society, but an entitled society.
Entitled.
You know, I
Everybody.
one thing I always remember is my dad used to tell me, Amy, always remember the world don't owe you shit. The
Nope.
world owes you nothing. And I've applied that so much to life
Hmm.
in terms of like, yeah, nobody owes me nothing. No one's got to validate nothing for me.
Nope.
No one's got to affirm my reality or whatever. It is what I make it,
Hmm.
And another thing my dad would tell me, everyone's there's people that make it happen and people that make excuses, and you get to choose which one you are. And that's why I say, like, I love the old school mentality because it prepared us for real life. And these over emotional people that lack logic and critical thinking and all this crazy shit that's going on. I think it sounds really loud on
Hmm.
social media because that's where the loudest. But I
Right.
find that when we have these conversations in person, the majority of us feel the same way. Because
Right.
we're like, what the fuck world are y'all living in? Because that is not the world we're living in at all. But
It,
it's interesting to see how much and how quickly this mentality is plaguing the next generation.
yeah.
Like the kids, like our kids, like younger kids. And that's why I think as a parent, I'm super on my kids. I'm super on my kids about thinking critically and knowing who they are and challenging them because I'll be damned.
Well, I mean, if you just imagine, once upon a time, education wasn't provided to everybody. It wasn't public and free,
Mm-hmm.
right? So those who had education obviously came from money who they could afford it, and just pull out an old freaking letter from a 1800s, you know, person who wrote a letter in nice fancy script with no errors and no scratch outs and no freaking whiteout, no alt delete and restart whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like the the further we get away from earning that and then having pride in that, I feel like it's just the whole blur, and then everybody comes from instant gratification,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you'd have to anticipate news, you'd have to anticipate, you know, the fruits of your labor,
Yeah.
right? And they come from a lot harder times, harsher times than ours for sure. But you know, I feel like that grit that we once had as a
Mm-hmm.
country is we're just losing it with the
Yeah.
easier things to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even everybody has their opinions and belief, but you know we're we have a society of people arguing for higher minimum wage when they do less work.
Yep.
What you go into a McDonald's or a Walmart and you gotta check yourself out. You basically work there, and we gotta pay them more wages. So what?
Yeah.
What are we paying them for?
Yeah.
So it's just, to me, it's just you know no. I ain't trying to throw no shade on anybody who's got a minimum wage paying job who's trying to get further in life. But do yourself a favor. Go learn a trade. Go
Yep.
get an education. Go teach you something and make you some money, because it ain't there at the minimum wage job. There's a
Yeah.
reason it's a minimum wage job,
Yeah.
because people need certain services, and that's kind of a starting service that you can get paid for your labors. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep. And I feel like these institutions are trying to deter a lot of people away from trades
Hmm.
and like blue collar jobs. And I think it boils down to, you mentioned earlier, those who had money had knowledge,
Yeah.
right? Now I feel like what we're seeing is they've caught on to the fact that we've been in a position to attain knowledge, and they've infiltrated these institutions that are supposed to give us that knowledge
Hmm.
and pulled a little reverse psychology on us, and now they're steering us in another direction and saying, here, this is what's good for you, go get $40,000 in debt, you know
Yeah.
and go be at a job that isn't going to require the degree that you earned.
Right.
And then, boom, you're 20 years behind in life as to where somebody who went to trade school
Right.
or is in a field that's necessary, like nursing or lawyers, things of that nature, and you guys are one up just
Right.
by making that decision.
Well, there's also too the like it's the public education systems because those city colleges, those are public schools, man. They're not private schools. So if you have private schools, you got all the money. You're what you're gonna get is a little bit more, push in the right direction, right? Over
Mm-hmm.
here, it's just a job. You're just a number. You're just part of the institution, right? So your number makes money. They're just pushing through their jobs. They really don't care. They're not going to encourage you. They're just trying to fill classes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if those kids that were being encouraged to go to school were encouraged to go to something, learn something that they could make money. Like, what's the first thing you should probably know when you're starting an educational career, right? If you're going to go to school, whatever you're majoring in or whatever you're aspiring to be, if they don't make enough money and you're okay with that, like you understand, you have to understand the concept of economics. Like you're going to come into debt and you're not going to make very much money. So you're going to be poor for the rest of your life. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're okay with that, because that's how much you want to do that, hey man, go be happy, do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the cost, and you're aware of it up front. But if it's not all subject matter in the educational system is that low end job.
Mm-hmm.
So a big part of it is that too. But the way this world works, man, you got to have the have nots to have the haves, right?
Yeah.
So guys can't guys can't win if there ain't nobody losing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just how it is. You
Yeah.
know.
And you're besides the music, I'm not sure how many people know, but you work construction. You and I talked about this.
Right.
How life changed. How old were you when you got into that, and how much did it change your life?
So originally, a friend of mine's growing up, we were kids together. His pops got me a job out at Rancho Seco, and it was a nuclear power plant owned by SMUT, but they had been shut down for like 20 years, since the 80s or whatever, and there was really not much going on out there. And then they finally kicked up some dust and were like, you know what, we're going to decommission this plant. We need to hire some people. That was like my real first opportunity to work for like any kind of trade. And at the time, I was doing radiological work, but I met a lot of good people, older cats, because I'm like a kid. I'm like maybe 18, 19 years old. And I meet a lot of good people. They're a lot older than me in their 40s and 30s. And be like, you know what, man? You're a pretty sharp dude. You could probably do this. You could do that.
Mm-hmm.
You ever thought about getting into this? And I had never thought about it before. So, it's like, man, you guys all drive nice cars. You guys all make good money. I was like, you know, well, tell me more. Tell me how you
Mm-hmm.
do this. And so sometimes that's all it takes, right? Because in high school, they don't tell you, they don't have like a trade program where it's kind of preparing you if you don't want to, study, you don't want to work, or you know what I mean? You just want
Mm-hmm.
to work with your hands. Some people are like that. I'm not a type of person who could sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, answer
I
phones.
think a lot of men are actually like that, which is why I think the school system kind of feminizes a lot of young men. They don't cater to their just learning style. But go on.
Well, I feel like so that's an important that's a valuable piece of information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like working with your hands? Do you like building? The do you feel satisfaction when you create something? Like, is there a sense of pride in that? Because if you do, maybe trade work is for you. You
Mm-hmm.
just got to learn some tools. The thing that I actually benefited from was my dad. He was old school. My grandpa, he was like a jack of all trades. So he basically would tell us, "Hey, we need a new roof. Let's go. Hey, we got to paint the house. Let's go."
Yep.
And so like it was like there was two reasons. One, if he kept us busy, we weren't running the streets with our friends getting into trouble. But two, he couldn't afford to pay somebody else to do it. So he had the boys, come on, everybody get your work clothes on, let's go to work. So we grew up, familiarizing ourselves with tools, and not to say that we were, any kind of like great construction workers, but it was it was a leg up on anybody who's never touched a tool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think my pops for showing me that, because some people didn't have that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And it really is a one up in life. I grew up with all blue collar men.
mm-hmm.
My dad's an electrician. He owns his electrical company.
Nice.
All the deals, they're all hands on kind of man. My husband, hands on kind of guy, you know?
Yeah.
And I just grew around people that troubleshoot. You got a problem, you fix it. Or you're going to pay a man to fix it. But my dad's very like prideful in the sense that he's like, everything is about survival. So if you don't know how to do it yourself, then what are you doing? You know, you got to learn how to do things on your own. So even just as a girl, I feel like he raised me as a boy in that sense, because I'd be right there with my tool belt and he'd be like, well, wire goes to what? You know, and, oh, we're changing the car's oil today. And, look at this and look at here. Definitely got yelled at for, shining the light wrong or not, finding a specific bolt or freaking screwdriver. But it's cool to see how so many young men and women that grew up, having a more difficult life, or my dad also ran the streets when he was younger. He's from San Jose. And trades was such a way out.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a gem that doesn't get talked about enough, because a lot of young men feel like because they dropped out of school. My husband's a high school dropout. Yep. He's making more than everybody that has graduated, all his peers. Right. He was the one that wasn't going to be nothing. And I've seen this time and time again, where a lot of young men in general don't know that this could be a ticket out, and just because you dropped out of school, just because school wasn't for you, doesn't mean you can't make something of your life. Because it's a game changer. You guys, be making what doctors be making.
Well, definitely. We get some good money, and but you could be a dental hygienist if that's what floats your boat. Shoot, they make good money. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of jobs that get good money, but you just like my wife, she works in like pulmonary function, right? So she has coworkers that they're respiratory therapists. Yeah. And like it's, you don't have to go to school the length that the doctor did to make to make doctor and lawyer money. You got to go to school. There's just no ands, ifs, or buts about it. But then you got to get out of debt once you start making all that money. But there's other opportunities, and it could just be trade, or it could just be, like trade style work within the medical field, or, all these specialty. But they don't tell you that when you go to school. Yeah. They're like, we need teachers. Yeah. And teachers make the least amount
or
of
art degrees.
Yeah, right.
You get to express your emotions for the rest of your life in your paintings.
You can, but you won't be very rich unless you can, you actually got some talent.
Yeah, and there's always got to be plan Bs,
Yeah, for real.
Well, Maddog, I was going to ask you, do you prefer being called Maddog or from your name? Because your name's Mario, right?
Mm-hmm,
I lurked on your Instagram.
Yeah, you know what? Like, pretty much all the homies call me Maddog, but, it's like my family, my loved ones, they call me Mario. But, I wanted to touch on a topic, too. Yeah. Because my daughter, I feel like I kind of, unlike your dad, saying, come over here and get in here with me and do this and that. My son was born 3 years later than her. So, I never used to, for whatever reason, I used to, in my mind, thought my daughter was too good for any kind of yard work, no mechanic work. But all she wanted to do was switch places with her brother. And I'd be like, get up, come on, we're doing the yard work. Come on, I need some help. We're changing the brakes. He's like 9. He's like, man, this sucks. I don't want to do this. So he's over there trying to negotiate with his sister. He'd be like, you come out here and help, and I'll go in there. And I'm like, get your ass out here, And um, I should have gave her a little bit more of that. Um, just educated her to being self sufficient. But I just, for the life of me, I was like, man, that's my little princess. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want her having to do manual labor. I do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just seen her, you know, she was just my little baby. But when I was in prison, and the thing I wanted to talk about was that my pops was able to look out for my kids,
Mm-hmm.
filling basically where I wasn't. So he would, he would, you know, help them along like your dad did. My daughter was kind of small, tiny. Hey, can you crawl underneath the house or
Yeah.
can you get in the attic? Okay, what's it look like? So she was able to learn the same skills that I learned from him. She was able to learn from him as a woman, as a young woman who her dad kept it from her. So
Yeah.
so it was just a trip, and you know, I don't live in regret either because it came from a good place in my heart. I was just protecting my baby, but you know, I wish I would have the eyes I have now. Then
Yeah.
I would have seen it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
I think it was supposed to play out how it did. It's funny you say that because so my dad, he's not my biological father.
Hmm.
Um, but he's raised me since I was about 7 months old, 7, 9 months old.
Hmm.
And when my sister was born, that same like loving expression that you have with your daughter,
Yeah.
that's exactly what he had from my sister. Like she is his world, And as a little kid, I was obviously because I didn't understand like the difference in the biological love and not, So it was something that affected me. But now it's like having kids of my own. I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. That's your blood. That's your baby. But I think because of that and because my parents were so young, he was a little bit more roughneck with me.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like you're just gonna learn. We're gonna get in here. And then I think as my sister got older and as my brothers got older, he did start to incorporate more them, the
Yeah.
same things, just in a different way, in a more mature and wise
Right.
way. With me, I got the grit of it, the pay
Yeah.
attention, look past your nose, kind of kind of stuff. But it sharpened me up because
Right.
he would be on my ass, you know. Um, but I think it's wonderful that your daughter got to experience that from her abuelo,
Yeah.
because it does. I attribute so much of my mentality to how my dad was and just allowing me that independence and just challenging me,
Yeah.
you know? And I do see the difference that it made. Like, if I were to compare myself to my sister, she's hella sharp, she's hella witty too,
Yeah.
but it's in a different way, you know?
Nice.
And I like it. I liked it,
Yeah.
and she got to say she got both. I would have loved to have both. I would have loved to have my dad that was like, oh no, mijita, like don't mow the lawn. I was out there mowing the lawn at like 8 years old. But it's beautiful to see that even though she didn't get that side of you, she got it from her grandpa.
Yeah.
And I know that that's gonna take her far in life.
Yeah. Shout out, pops.
That's cool.
Well, I appreciate the invite.
Yes, of
We
course.
could sit here and talk all day, man.
I have a feeling we could, but before we wrap up, what are some key lessons you've learned from life that you would like people to know?
So number one is, man, be in the moment. Be in your present moment. Spend time with spend time with the people who you love and hold near and dear to your heart, specifically your kids, your parents, because not everybody's promised tomorrow.
Hmm.
And knowing that, know that if you got another day to breathe air into your lungs and live life, then live it like it's your last because it just might be. So if you have loved ones that you lost at an early age before their time, then just know that, or just think about, had they had the opportunity to continue living like you, what would they do with their life? If,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because hindsight's 2020, and there's a lot of people still stuck in prison. There's a lot of people who died early, and They love to switch places with you in life. They'd
Mm-hmm.
love to have your opportunity to come home to a wife who loves them, or to a daughter that runs and hugs them. They ain't seen them all day. This is probably the best feeling in the whole world, man. When you come home and your little girl ain't seen you all day and she runs up and screams, "Daddy," and wraps her arms around you, like, that's priceless. I'm fortunate enough that I was able to have experienced those real life situations before I went to prison. And there's a lot of people that get locked up when they're young, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't never get to experience that until later in life. So it's almost like they're missing out on that full spectrum of how beautiful life could really be.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice is live in the moment, man. Embrace your loved ones, hold them near and dear to you. Spend the time you can, and try to make a positive impact in this world.
Amen. And I co-sign that because time is the one thing that we can never get back.
Yes, man.
It's the most valuable currency, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
Well, Mario, Mad Dog, thank you so much for joining.
I
I
appreciate
appreciate
you.
you taking the time.
Yeah. It was
And
nice
that
to meet
wraps
you.
it up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.